Simon Miller here from What Culture with yet another one of our When Something Died videos. And of course, because death is such a serious topic, I sit down to try and replicate just that. If you're now saying to yourself, but Simon, you are wearing a Super Dead t-shirt, how do you know that I don't wear this to funerals? Just so there's no confusion, I absolutely would never do that. But yes, 20 years ago, WCW died. It has been over 2 decades since World Championship Wrestling closed its doors, and of course when that did happen, mere days later we had WrestleMania 17, which many people describe as the greatest WrestleMania ever, and because of that, it was just like, bye WCW, and then everybody kind of forgot. With time, the sheer nostalgia for it brought it back to life, hence why in this year's Hall of Fame, we inducted the NWO and we inducted Eric Bischoff, and Goldberg, he keeps popping up for one more run. And don't forget when Sting finally got into WWE, people thought that was a massive deal, even if it did then get really weird. So the remains of WCW are there to see, but aside from a few crazy people on Twitter that pretend they're about to bring it back, the truth of the matter is, never gonna see it again. As documented on a recent episode of Retro Ups and Downs, the very last thing the WCW audience saw on Monday Nitro before it was shot out of a cannon was the simulcast, which essentially means they were watching Raw and then it was just done. And it's become a moment in time for Vince McMahon et al., and that was always going to happen. Whoever was the victor of the Monday Night Wars was always gonna wave a big flag and say, well, we were the best and the other people sucked. Yes, that's essentially what's happened for all this time. The issue there, however, is the situation that it created in its wake. We had such megastars back then, as both companies went to battle with one another, that today they are still treated like big deals. As far as I can tell, that's not going to change anytime soon. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, it has supplied us with some tremendous moments, but the equivalent would be watching a WWF show in the early 90s and seeing Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage cut a promo on like Pedro Morales or Ivan Koloff, and if that had happened back then, everybody would have raised their eyebrow like, what the hell are they talking about? It's one of the reasons why Vince Russo was hired by WCW, because he promised everything new. We're gonna have new stories, we're gonna have new wrestlers, we were gonna have new everything, and in theory, this was a terrific concept, the problem being twofold. One, Vince Russo soon decided I should be on TV as much as I possibly can, and two, some of the stories that he presented to us were well and truly crazy. And what it laid the groundwork for was a bunch of narratives that were absolutely awful, stipulation matches where the stipulation wasn't adhered to, the inmates running the asylum, meaning having any kind of focused direction was next to impossible, and yes, a lot of the decisions that Russo and Eric Bischoff made were just never gonna help anyone. All of this came together to not only drive off the fans, but also drive off the money, and that's what killed WCW. They simply ran out of cash. Because in the year 2000, World Championship Wrestling was just leaking finances to the point they were open to offers. It's why in 2001, Fusient Media came together to offer around about $60 million for the company, until Turner executives took a gun and they shot WCW right in the head when they went, well, you can buy the company, but we're not gonna give you any TV time, meaning those who were about to purchase were like, well, why the hell would we want that? Where are we gonna put it? It meant the whole brand was worthless other than the tape library, and there was only one real suitor for that, and of course it was the World Wrestling Federation, and none other than Vincent Kennedy McMahon. So while the final date on all WCW paychecks was March 23rd, 2001, the day it actually died, and for hyperbole's sake that we will call the point of no return, was none other than October 18th, 1999. For you see, on this night, viewers were told by Tony Schiavone and Bobby the Brain Heenan that we were in for a brand new direction when it came to the company. We then saw a glimpse of this when Bret Hart just walked out and said, hey, nobody has scheduled me any interview time, so I just thought I'd do it in the middle of this match we're seeing. And so I suppose there was a little bit of intrigue. Essentially what we were going with was that everything you see as fake is actually real, but everything you see as real is actually fake, but you're meant to think that everything you are witnessing is legitimate, even though it felt like anything but. The saving grace on this evening surely would be the world title match that had been thrown together, but that ended when Lex Luger just attacked Bret Hart as he did take on Sting, and all of a sudden everybody started to go, ruh-roh. This got even worse when we were told that we were going to have a New York evening gown match as well, but Medusa said that she didn't want to compete and then was forced into it. And if you didn't think you'd had enough work shoot angles already, all of a sudden from the entranceway, out came Buff Bagwell. He arrived in another, well, I didn't have any time to do a promo, so I thought I'd do a promo anyway, and started to tell everybody in the arena on this evening that he had been told by the brand new powers that be that he was the chosen one and that he was about to be fired to the top. So when he then came back to take on La Parka later and he looked absolutely bored out of his mind, well, it was well and truly baffling. The commentators talked about how he didn't look like his usual self, and if you didn't know any better, you would think he was deliberately trying to sabotage the match. But no pro wrestler would do that, because that would break the fundamentals of what pro wrestling is. The finish, sadly, gave us the context we needed, because after La Parka had kicked Buff right in the head, he just lay down, allowed La Parka to pin him, and then rather than sell the move, he got up and he just walked off. The story to all of this too was that Buff Bagwell had found out that he wasn't actually going to be the new poster boy, and because of that, he had refused to participate in a worked wrestling match. So now you were gonna go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. We're seeing the real behind the scenes, even though clearly it was an absolute pile of trash. So it's just a wrestler looking into a camera like I'm doing now and going, wrestling is fake, why are you watching your buffoons? And I'm sure on paper it sounds really good. Why focus on the worked side of pro wrestling when we can focus on the real side that happens away from the thing? But it doesn't work because it just gets really confusing. Case in point, seconds after this, he got smacked over the head by Jeff Jarrett, who had just left the WWF to come to WCW. But straight away you go, well, did he really hit him with a guitar? Is that part of the show? Or is this assault? And if it is assault, is he going to get arrested? It just didn't make any sense. I mean, was it even a real guitar? Was it a fake guitar? Nobody had any of the answers, and the reason for that is because it was shit. The rest of the show was pretty dire too, including plenty of backstage segments that just had random people walking through them because nobody was trying to keep things professional here at all, and fans voted with their TV remotes and they just turned off in droves because of course they did. WCW's core fan base didn't want sports entertainment, they wanted old school wrestling, and they were getting anything but. Given that a few months prior to this we were also coming off the finger poke of doom, well, you could just see where this was headed. This isn't to say that WCW didn't have its high points, because it clearly did, but when it decided to absolutely obliterate its fundamentals, it was like a ship having a leak, but instead of it being a small leak that was dripping, it was like you got a nuclear weapon and just fired it into the side. I mean, there were some no DQ matches that ended in a disqualification. And it is still worth a watch if you do have a curiosity when it comes to the promotion. Just believe you me, when you get to October 1999, just turn it off, walk away, go and do something else, and then when people say to you, hey, what do you think of WCW? You can reply, what a great company it was, I wonder why it went out of business. There you go, the death of WCW, and I'm sure you can come up with your own takes as well. That's the other sad thing about the whole ordeal. There are so many of them, and they just go on and on and on. And going back to the Bagwells, much like when Judy was raising up on a forklift, and that was another stipulation of the match. I still don't know why she was up there, but up there she was. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about the death of WCW, and let us know your good moments as well, because let's be positive. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this, give us a follow over on social media, or whatever you like to do on the internet, don't know what that means, and click another video on screen and watch another video. My name is Simon for What Culture, thank you for watching as always, and I think what really turned me off when it came to WCW is when Vince Russo decided every single thing should be on a pole matches. Hence we had Judy Bagwell on a forklift because that was the natural evolution. But we had like a dead rat on a pole, we had Viagra on a pole. If you can think of anything in the world, at one point it was probably on a flipping pole. And I saw so many of these that if I ever see one again in any promotion, I have to pretend it doesn't exist. And that, my friends, is not what wrestling should be doing 21. I'll see you on the next one.